Hello and welcome to the 2012 State of the County Address. Over the next few minutes, I want to give you an overview of the past year as it relates to your county government, explain the nuts and bolts of government finance, talk about some highlights of the year, and touch on some of the challenges. Oftentimes, as elected officials, we assume citizens have the same understanding of government finance as we do. But unless you deal with it every day, it can be a little confusing. That's why this year I want to back up a step and begin this year's address with Finance 101. First of all, let's look at where the county's income or revenues come from. The largest portion comes from property taxes, and then we have a very small percentage that comes from sales and other taxes, licensing and permits, court fees, fines and forfeitures, and other sources like contributions and investments. We also receive funds from impact fees, a special purpose local option sales tax or SPLOST, and grants, which I will touch on later. But let's look at the main source, property taxes, specifically residential and commercial property taxes. Residential properties make up the largest portion, or about 70% of our tax revenue. Henry County is considered a bedroom community. That means that a large percentage of our working citizens leave the county every day to go to work, come home to sleep, and then go back to work again the next day. It also means that percentage-wise, we don't have a lot of businesses located here. We are heavy on houses and light on commercial and business development, as you can see from the chart. And that makes us heavily dependent on homeowners' property taxes to pay for the cost of services the county provides. Services like police, fire, 911, the jail, the courts, roads and bridges, parks and recreation, senior services, our libraries, the health department, and many more. As property values have plummeted over the last few years, it has become increasingly difficult to provide these services without raising taxes. But here in Henry County, we have held the line on raising taxes, understanding that our citizens are also struggling in this economy. While many surrounding counties increased millage rates this year, some by as much as 4 mills, we did not increase our millage. Instead, we worked very hard to cut our budget. In fact, we have actually cut our budget over the last 3 years by $20 million. So where does the money go once it is collected? Basically, there are 3 major accounts funded by property tax that I want to explain. First, we have the general fund. This is the fund used for employee salaries, utilities, the cost associated with running departments, or the day-to-day operations of the county. Then we have the Capital Projects Fund. That is a portion of money which is set aside each year for major expenditures. It may be used for things like the purchase of a fire engine, repairing a storm-damaged roof, or equipment leases. And then we have fund balance. This is the county reserves, otherwise known as a rainy day fund. The county sets aside a minimum of 25% of its annual budget in a special account to have on hand in the event of an emergency. It assures that the county's financial obligations can be met should something catastrophic happen. It also helps us to maintain a higher bond rating. In fact, while the federal government recently had theirs lowered, Henry County stayed the same at AA2. And that means a lower interest rate when we bond projects, saving taxpayers millions in interest. So keep in mind those 3 types of funds. Then we have those special funds I mentioned earlier. These are funds that come from sources other than property taxes. The first type of special funds is our grant funds. We have had a lot of successes applying for grants over the years. In fact, this year alone, we have received over $7.6 million in grant funds for various departments to enhance programs and services for the benefit of our citizens. Grants can either supplement a department's budget or provide an amenity or service that has not been included in the budget, but they can only be used for the purposes that was described in the grant application, and they can't be used to supplant, that is, pay for equipment that is already included in the budget. 2 large grants we received this year were from the state of Georgia for trails. We were awarded $435,000 to pave some of the existing gravel walking trails at Nash Farm Park. These improvements will make the trails wheelchair accessible and also eliminate the ongoing maintenance of the gravel paths. The second grant was for $750,000 to construct a multi-use trail connecting Austin Road Middle School to Panola Mountain State Park. That trail will connect the north end of the county into a 20-mile network of multi-use trails known as the Arabia Mountain Heritage Trails. Recreation amenities like these have become even more important as families are choosing to spend less money on vacations and activities and instead are staying home and using the county's parks more often. The third type is SPLOST funds. This is the 1 penny sales tax approved by voters in 2008. Because we have 7 interchanges along the interstate and tourism attractions like Atlanta Motor Speedway and Tanger Outlet Mall, as well as numerous fall tournaments, a large portion of these revenues are actually paid by tourists and travelers who shop or dine here or stay in our hotels. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that with budgets as tight as they are, without that penny sales tax, you wouldn't see all the construction going on across the county for roads and fire stations and parks. There is a specified list of projects that must be funded by SPLOST, and SPLOST dollars can only be spent on those projects. They cannot be put into the county's general fund budget to be used to pay salaries or operating expenses. Henry County has brought in more than $98 million through its third SPLOST program, and thanks to this sales tax this past year alone, we were able to build a fire station, expand the county's popular soccer complex to 14 fields, widen Hudson Bridge Road, open a beautiful new center to house the victims of domestic violence, convert the old Stockbridge City Hall into a fantastic police precinct, improve a number of intersections on main thoroughfares, and pave several dirt roads. In addition, the land for the public safety training facility in the south end of the county was paid for with SPLOST funds. Once complete, this facility will serve all police departments in the county, the sheriff's department, and the fire department, enabling them to stay in the county for their training. They will be able to practice more often, resulting in a more highly trained public safety worker, yet their travel expenses will go down, saving taxpayers money. And several days a month, the firing range will be open to the public for firearm practice. The last of these special funds is impact fees. Impact fees are assessed on every new home or business constructed in the county. By law, these funds cannot be used for the day-to-day operations of the county or to pay salaries, but they can be used for 3 areas: public safety, parks and recreation and green space, and the library system. And like grants and SPLOST funds, impact fees for parks must be spent on park projects. Impact fees for public safety must be spent on public safety, and so on. If we have a need or an opportunity, these funds enable us to make strategic purchases to enhance our services and amenities without affecting the general fund. Since we first started collecting them in 2004, more than $17 million in impact fees have funded projects like the Government Annex on Sac-Hinton Parkway, a new emergency operations center, an expansion at the jail, and the Locust Grove Recreation Center, plus books and computers for the library system and fire trucks and ambulances. These fees were also used to buy land for 2 of our public libraries, as well as Mosley, Jonesboro Road, Sandy Ridge, and Nash Farm parks. I know some citizens have asked why the county has continued to purchase parkland and improve our parks in this down economy. The answer is park amenities add significantly to our quality of life, and the money to build these projects comes from impact fees designated for park projects, not the general fund. So we talked about 3 special categories of funds: grants, SPLOST, and impact fees. We are thankful for all of them as they allow us to enhance the quality of life for our citizens with improvements we simply could not afford to make at this time. But it is important that our citizens understand that none of these funds can be used for anything other than what they are designated for. Earlier, I spoke about the fact that the burden of paying for services falls primarily on the backs of homeowners because we're heavily weighted on homes and much too light on commercial and business properties. But the disparity goes beyond what we pay in taxes. It has been estimated that for every $1 of tax a home pays, it costs the local government $3 to provide these homes with the services I mentioned: police, fire, 911, roads, park and recreation, etc. But for every $3 in taxes a business pays, it only costs about $1 to provide services to them. So you can see why businesses are very important. They pay more in taxes but use less in terms of services. Because property tax is based on the value of a building, a store such as Walmart must pay far more proportionately in taxes each year. In fact, it would take about 68 average price homes just to equal what one retailer like Sam's Club pays in taxes to Henry County, or 243 homes to equal the $170,000 in taxes the South Point Shopping Center paid this year, and 824 homes to equal Atlanta Motor Speedway's $578,000 tax bill. Now here's something else to think about. This does not take into account the amount of sales tax these businesses generate or the number of jobs they create. So they contribute to our economy in a number of ways without adding a single child to the school system, and they use very few services. That is why we constantly talk about the need for economic development and bringing more businesses and new jobs to our community, and why we took the bold step last year in purchasing Terra Field. But before I explain the benefits of that purchase and the $15 million in funding we received from the FAA toward the airport, I want to share with you some of the tough budget decisions we had to make this year. Economists have said this is indeed the worst recession since the Great Depression. It has affected the entire world, not just Henry County, and the effects will echo through our economy for years to come. As an example, for the second year in a row, we saw a significant drop in property tax values across the county. This year, the drop in value was $381 million. This was on top of the whopping $1 billion drop from the previous year. That amounts to a budget reduction of 25% over the last 3 years. Imagine your budget for a moment. Let's say your income is $60,000 a year, and suddenly your income dropped to $45,000. Would you feel that drop? Absolutely. And you would have to take immediate steps to close the gap. That's exactly what we did in this year's budget. Henry County closed a $15 million budget shortfall and balanced the budget by going line item by line item to make responsible, permanent cuts through decreases in individual departments' budgets across the board. We cut 58 jobs and eliminated many other vacant positions. We also implemented 4 furlough days for county employees for a savings of $1.2 million. We reduced our support to outside agencies by 50%. Then, after cutting everywhere we could, we looked for new sources of revenue. By raising the hotel-motel tax to 8%, we expect to generate about $125,000 more in revenue from tourists who stay in our hotels. We implemented new higher fees for police reports and a new $25 fee for out-of-county seniors to use our senior centers, which we have already elected to increase to $75 beginning next fiscal year. Both fees bring in more revenue and shift the financial burden to those who use the services, not the taxpayers. We also withdrew $2.2 million in excess funds from the county's retirement account and used $5.3 million in SPLOST funds earmarked for road paving to pay for road resurfacing for a second year, providing $7.5 million to help balance the budget. Let me add that the excess funds from the county's retirement account in no way jeopardizes the future strength of that fund. You won't see Henry County leaders scrambling in the future as you've seen in other governments to get those pension costs under control. We always make our decisions with an eye toward the future. To sum all this up, we have continued to offer services and build projects that enhance your quality of life, and we're able to balance our budget in spite of a $381 million hit to our tax digest, and we did it all without raising taxes, unlike many surrounding counties. Albert Einstein once said, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." These are times unlike most of us have ever seen. If we want different results, we cannot continue down the same old path. We have to take the road less traveled by. We have to do things we have never done before. We must take some bold steps to get us moving in the right direction and attract more industry and the higher paying jobs we desire for our community. Ladies and gentlemen, being bold does not mean sitting and doing nothing while we wait to see if things will get better. Being bold means aggressively taking steps to make things better. Bold is taking steps like the Water and Sewerage Authority did years ago when it began putting in motion its vision to build the Tussa Hall Reservoir. It was a costly endeavor, but thanks to their vision and foresight, we now have enough water to supply this entire county for more than a year if we didn't receive another drop of rain. How many communities can say that today? Bold is doing what Henry Medical Center did last year to partner with Piedmont Healthcare, one of the most prestigious healthcare organizations in the state, to ensure our citizens have access to the highest quality health care while also positioning the county to attract more jobs in the healthcare sector. Bold is working tirelessly to ensure the funding for a Southern Crescent Technical School campus in Henry County stayed in the state's budget so we can cultivate an educated workforce for our target industries. Bold is the E-Squared Economics and Education Plan developed by the Chamber, Board of Education, county and city officials, and dozens of volunteers who put in countless hours and extraordinary ingenuity to develop a plan to take Henry County's good public school system to great. If you haven't had the opportunity to review it, I highly recommend it. You will be amazed at what a dedicated group of volunteers pulled together and did for this community. Bold is pursuing grants to enhance our recreation amenities and obtaining Livable Centers Initiative grants to study how to design a high-end mixed-use development with Class A office space, fine dining, and shopping so that we can offer executives the kind of quality of life they don't just want, but demand. Bold is taking steps like the one the board and I took last summer when we acquired Terra Field. Now, what I want to make sure people understand is that the Federal Aviation Administration paid $15 million of the $17.7 million price tag for the airport. So Henry County government was able to acquire the airport, its taxiways, and contiguous properties, plus a hangar and 218 acres of adjacent land for just $2.7 million. And we will spread those payments out over 3 budget years. According to GDOT's Aviation Division, Henry County's airport, which we recently renamed the Atlanta South Regional Airport, already has an economic output of more than $25 million based on the sum of all direct airport and visitor impacts combined with the multiplier effects of payroll in connection to aviation businesses located in and around the airport. But there is potential for the airport to be so much more. We are already working with engineers to extend the runway and install an instrument landing system that will help make Henry County's airport the preferred choice for aviation in the region. Once these improvements are complete, we anticipate increased ad valorem taxes for aircraft housed within the county, together with higher fuel sales and other aviation investments that will add to the local tax base. The acquisition of this airport will also help us to attract more corporations like Caterpillar, Snapper, Pep Boys, Summit Racing, Briggs & Stratton, and Crown Distributors who prefer flying their private planes to commercial airlines for their business travel. And the real exciting news here is it's the major reason we made this investment. is the potential for the airport to attract an entirely new industry of high-paying jobs to our community. There is an enormous opportunity for growth within the aerospace industry. The average aerospace worker in Georgia earns more than $61,000 annually, 135% higher than the average salary in Henry County. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a wonderful community. We have an award-winning parks and recreation department with playgrounds and amenities that have been recognized as some of the best in the metro area. Our public schools are constantly being lauded at both the state and national levels. We have some of the lowest crime rates in metro Atlanta. We are opening doors to new industries and greater opportunities right here at home. We have a lot of good things going for us. So here's the question that you should each be asking yourself. Do you want to be safe and good, or do you want to take a chance and be great? I just returned from a trip to Israel where I was privileged to be part of a delegation from Georgia to meet with business and community leaders from this country and learn how they have been able to prosper even in the wake of extreme uncertainties. As an example, they dug a deep well that was supposed to supply water for thousands, only to learn it was salt water. So what did they do? They pumped the salt water into ponds and turned it into a saltwater fish hatchery that has created jobs and provided a new source of food in this desert. It was a real eye-opener. This is just one example of how an unexpected roadblock became an opportunity to create an industry no one had even conceived of until that point. An obstacle became an opportunity when their vision allowed them to think outside the box. I want to share with you a quote from Israel's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion. All the experts are experts on what was. And I want to repeat that again. All the experts are experts on what was. There are no experts on what will be. To become an expert on the future, vision must replace experience. It was vision that led a group of pilgrims to board a boat and cross an ocean to this country just a few hundred years ago. Experience would have kept them in Europe. It was vision that led to the drafting of a constitution. Experience would have kept this nation under the rule of a king. It was vision that led wagon trains to the uncharted western frontier in search of a better life. Experience would have kept them in New England. The spirit of America is the spirit of vision. Without it, at this time and place in our history, if we let experience rule us, we will fail. Henry County is poised to achieve its greatest era of prosperity yet, but it will take vision. Together and with the American spirit that is so deeply rooted in all of us, we will build this county into one that is economically stronger and more competitively viable, with quality jobs right here at home, vibrant art programs, excellent schools, and a variety of healthy activities for families to enjoy together. I'm going to leave you with this final quote. Man cannot discover new oceans unless he has the courage to lose sight of the shore. As we begin 2012, let's begin to think like those pilgrims who sailed out into the unknown in search of a better life for their families. Yes, it was a risk, but the risk they took and their children after them are what built this country into the greatest nation on earth. Let's continue their legacy. Thank you.